Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session about building a sustainable community. There are 5 key pillars to building a sustainable community, and we're going to go through them all one by one. And we only have 15 minutes, so let's get started. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Anne-Laure, and I'm the founder of Ness Labs. I am a neuroscience student. I'm starting a PhD very soon, and I'm very passionate about mindful productivity and mental health, which led me to creating the Ness Labs community. So what are you going to learn in this session? 3 key things. The first one is going to be how you can define your goals in terms of building your community and making it sustainable. The second one is going to be how you can build your tribe, your community. How do you attract? But not only attract, how do you also retain members so they stay and your community thrives? And finally, how do you make it sustainable? Because if you cannot generate any form of revenue for your community, this is not going to last very long. Actually, most communities fall apart even before they reach 1 year. So how can you avoid this happening to you? Well, of course, you need people to be engaged and to keep on coming back in your community, but you also need something else that maybe sounds boring, but that is essential, and that is money. You need money in order to invest in your community. Investing may mean buying the right tools, getting the right platform, collaborating with the right people, building the right partnerships. A lot of the things that are going to make your community sustainable actually do cost money. And instead of shying away from it, we should actually embrace it and try and make sure that our community is sustainable, both in terms of people coming back, but also financially. I'm a massive fan of taking notes. So if, like me, you're a note taker, now would be the right time to grab your notebook or to open your note-taking app. So there's a useful framework that I love using when I try to explain to people how they can build a sustainable community. And I call it the 5P framework of sustainable community building. The first P is PACT. How are members expected to contribute and what value will they get in return? The second P is people. So these members, who are they? How and how often will they interact together and connect together? What kind of relationships are they expected to build together? The third P is platform. So now that you know what your pact is going to be and who are the people that you want to have in your community, where exactly are they going to interact? Where will the community live? Is it going to be self-hosted? Is it going to be on social media using a hashtag? Or maybe it's going to be more of a hybrid model. Then the fourth P is promotion. So obviously an empty community is not going to work. You need people in your community. So how are you going to promote it? How will people find about your community? And who exactly is going to spread the word about it? Is it going to be yourself? Is it going to be members that you're turning into ambassadors? There are so many ways to promote your community, but this is something where you need to be a little bit intentional. And finally, the fifth P is profit. As I said, money may sound a little bit boring, but if you're attending this event, you're probably not part of the people who are shying away from thinking about these topics. Profit is really important in order to make the community sustainable. So how is the community going to sustain itself financially? Again, there are different business models, and we're going to explore some of them so you can decide which one is the right one for your community. Okay, so now let's go through the 5 P's of the sustainable community building framework one by one. And I'm going to give you examples every single time. So as we said, the first one is the pact, and it's about co-creating value with your community members. So you need to ask yourself, what is your community's virtuous cycle? What I mean is that what can people contribute in the community in order to get value back from the community? You really need to build that give first in order to get back mindset in your community if you want it to be sustainable. Because if you only have people who are passive consumers and nobody actively creating content and contributing, your community is basically going to be dead. So you need to figure out what exactly are people supposed to do, how are they supposed to contribute, and what kind of value are they going to get in return. And obviously, you need to make sure that the value they're getting in return makes sense compared to the amount of effort they're supposed to put into the community themselves. So that's why you need to think about your promise as a community leader as well, because you can't really expect members to do all of the work. You also need yourself to be contributing and to ensure that they're having the best experience possible. So think about your pact. what are people supposed to contribute, and what are you going to contribute yourself to make sure that everyone is getting the value that they're expecting from the community. Here is an example. Community members are expected to help each other with constructive feedback and useful questions. As a community leader, I will contribute my own feedback and offer office hours to those who need the most help. As you can see, I kept it quite generic, and I really recommend that you tailor it to your own community. So let's say that you have a community for writers who are trying to help each other write better. So you have to make it clear that community members are expected to give feedback to each other, and that as a community leader, you're also going to have office hours where you tell people tips and strategies for them to write better. Now, people, the crux of thriving communities. So this is where you ask yourself, how exactly are members going to connect together? That could be a one-to-one relationship. That could be a one-to-many relationship, many-to-many. You could have small groups and masterminds. And you also need to figure out if you want it to be live or asynchronous. Live could be a Zoom call or in person. Asynchronous could be in a forum where people can reply whenever they have the time. And how often are they going to connect together? Is it going to be daily, weekly, or monthly? And what kind of relationship do you want them to build together? Is there going to be any kind of hierarchy in your community, like maybe mentors who are supporting other people, or is it going to be more of a flat type of organization with peer support? Again, both can work, but it's really about being intentional about the kind of people that you want to attract and the kind of relationship that you want them to have together. Here's another example. Community members will connect through weekly mastermind calls of 10 participants maximum to provide each other peer support. So again, you have the format and you have the frequency and you have the number of people who are going to be in those groups. So that's really helpful in terms of shaping expectations for your community members and making your community sustainable. Now, the platform. So a big mistake I see lots of people making is spending way too much time thinking about the platform first and thinking that this is what is going to define their communities. So you see community builders spending hours and hours and hours researching different community platforms, when I do think this is an important pillar, but it's not necessarily the first one. Your PACT and your people are the most important pillars. You need to start from there. But once you have that right, yes, it is also important to think about your platform, because it is going to have an impact on how people interact together and how they and yourself fulfill the PACT. So where is the community going to be hosted? Is it going to be online versus offline? Is it going to be on a chat application where it's going to be faster conversations, for example, Telegram or WhatsApp, or maybe a Discord or a Slack? Or is it going to be forums like Circle, for example? And is it going to be a private community or something that is a little bit more of a public agora? And think of all of your different platforms, because even if, for example, your community is hosted on Circle, maybe your community is also interacting on Twitter, or maybe you also have a community newsletter and you can have a mix of Zoom calls, face-to-face events. So try to think about your community across all of these different platforms. Another reason why it's important to think about your community across all of these different platforms is to have a better idea of the workload necessary to make your community sustainable. If you're spreading yourself too thin, let's say that your community is present on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Circle, you also have a newsletter and Zoom calls. Well, if it's just you managing the community, it's unlikely that you're going to manage to sustain that level of work for more than a year. So having a good bird's eye view of everywhere your community is present is also a good way to define your priorities and to make sure that your community is sustainable. There are lots of different ways you can go about choosing a community platform, but these are the criteria that I kind of like to think about. So I try to ask myself, do I want the communication to be asynchronous or do I want it to be live? And do I want it to be more focused on video or more on text messaging? And that gives you a good idea of the kind of options that you have. So for example, if you want something that is more asynchronous and you want to use text, you can see that Circle is a good option. If you want to stay asynchronous, but you want more video, you can use Loom. But if you want to keep video, but make it live, you have Zoom. And Telegram is a great option if you want it to be live and you want it to be more of a text communication-based community. Again, here's another example. The community is hosted on Slack with weekly Zoom calls. Every month, the community newsletter recaps members' achievements. We also give shout-outs on Twitter with the hashtag community wins. Now that you have a PACT, that you know your people, and that you've chosen a platform, it's time to promote your community. Promotion is all about marketing and growing your community. And you need to ask yourself, Where is the community going to be promoted and who is going to do the promotion? You may think that the community leader is the person who needs to do it, but that's not always the case. Maybe you want to focus on other stuff, such as content creation or promoting engagement within the community. So in terms of external promotion, you could have a dedicated marketer whose sole job is to make sure that the community is growing with new members. Or you could also turn your community members into ambassadors. So you could give them discount codes, which is something that I do in my own community, so they can invite their friends and tell them to join and pay a little bit less. You really need to be creative when it comes to promoting the community. So as I said, in my case, I'm using a referral program, but you could also give away free memberships for special occasions. You could partner with other communities where you cross-promote your memberships. You could also use seasonal events to attract new members, or you could go and talk on podcasts or try and be featured in the press. It's basic marketing. So again, the sky is the limit. And again, I know I sound like a parrot, but it's really about being intentional and thinking about what are the best ways that you can promote your community, again, in a sustainable way. If you're trying to do 1,000 things at the same time, you're probably not going to be able to stick to it. So try to have a reasonable, sustainable promotion plan for your community. Here is an example. The community will be mostly promoted on YouTube. Every month, there will be a competition where the best short about freelancing wins a free 1-year membership. So as you see, very simple. This is focusing on one platform. So perhaps we can assume that there's only one community lead who's building this community, and they don't have the time or energy or bandwidth to promote the community across multiple platforms. But that's what's good about it. It's reasonable and it's sustainable. And finally, yay, profit, money. So essential for a community's longevity. So you need to think about who is going to contribute revenue to the community. You may think that members need to do it, that it needs to be a paid community. It doesn't have to be the case. In my case, it is a paid community, but you could also have a different format where instead of paying for a monthly membership, you have your customers who have purchased a piece of software or a course who get unlimited, free, or included access to your community. You could also use sponsors who are subsidizing the community so members can actually join for free. Or you could also have ads. I'm not a big fan of them, but it's just to show you that there are lots of different options and paid memberships are not the only one. Once you know who is going to contribute revenue to your community, you need to think about how it's going to be generated and how often. Is it going to be recurring? Is it going to be based on traffic? That would be the case for advertising. Or is it going to be more of a one-off payment kind of thing? Again, intentionality and sustainability. Personally, I'm using a mix of recurring and one-off, which feels really sustainable and gives me a good idea of how much revenue is going to be generated in the next few months so I can invest into new projects. But again, it's really about deciding what works for you and for your specific community. And here's our final example. The community will be free for members. Sponsors will be able to promote relevant products to community members for a fee. So I intentionally here picked an example that is not a paid membership. The paid membership, though, is really nice because it kind of aligns incentives. Members are paying in order to get value, and they will keep on paying every month if they're getting the value that they're expecting. Here's a quick overview of the DNA of a sustainable community. You need to define your PACT, to define your people, to define your platform, to define your promotion strategy, and to define how you're going to generate profit. Just to give you a very quick case study with Ness Labs. We're a company with more than 350 articles published on our website, more than 35,000 newsletter subscribers, and more than 2,500 community members. Our 4 company pillars are content, community, coaching, and collaboration. So content, these are all of the articles that we're publishing on our website. We also have a private community that members can join in order to learn together and make friends who care about the same topics. For people who need to take things a little bit further and dig a little bit deeper, we also have one-to-one coaching. And finally, we collaborate with companies who want to promote their products, in particular tools for thought and productivity and creativity, to our members on our website and in our newsletter. To give you an overview of our funnel, basically most people discover Ness Labs either through social media or through search engines. Then some of the people who read our articles decide that they want more of that in their inbox and they sign up to the newsletter. And finally, a fraction fraction of the people who sign up to the newsletter, after receiving a few of them, feel like, well, you know what, instead of just consuming this content, I want to talk about it, I want to learn more, I want to connect with people who also care about these topics, and they end up joining the private community. That private community is actually what generates most of the revenue at Ness Labs. Around 60% comes from our paid memberships. Then we have 30% coming from sponsorships with companies that want to promote their products to our community. And finally, 10% from one-to-one coaching. Okay, so what does the 5P framework looks like for Ness Labs? Let's have a look together. Our PACT is to help people achieve more without sacrificing their mental health. And that means that we have a lot of content and opportunities to connect around mindful productivity. Our people are knowledge workers who are creative, ambitious, but sometimes prone to burnout. And this is why the principles of mindful productivity are so important to them. And Ness Labs is a great place for them to connect with people facing the same challenges. Our platform is made of 3 parts: Circle, which are the forums where people are connecting together asynchronously. Then we use Zoom for the live virtual meetups. And then we have ConvertKit for the monthly newsletter that we send to community members. In terms of promotion, you've seen the funnel before, but we have SEO, we have the newsletter, we have Twitter, and we also have our members who are turning ambassadors and using their discount codes to invite other members to the community. And finally, for the last P of the 5P framework, profit. The way we generate revenue with Ness Labs, as I mentioned earlier, is twofold. The first one is the paid memberships from the community members, and the other one is sponsorships from partners who want to promote their products to the community. What I really like about the 5P framework for sustainable community building is that it also helps you to plan what's next. So for example, for the PACT, you could try and deliver even more value to your members over the long term. For the people, you could offer more opportunities to connect together. In terms of platform, once you have more time, more energy, or maybe if you're growing the team, you could try and expand across multiple platforms. In terms of promotion, you could explore new channels for growth. And finally, when it comes to profit, you can always develop new products and services. That's it. That's the 5P framework of sustainable community building. I hope you found the framework helpful and enjoy the rest of the event. Bye.